Chapter 22, King Priyabrata, Canto 5. At the end of the fourth canto, Sukadeva Goswami described how Priyabrata had entered household life after having been perfectly instructed in self-realization by the great sage Narada. When Maharaja Parikshit heard this, he was highly astonished that a self-realized first-class devotee of the Lord could accept household life, which is the root cause of bondage to fruitive activities, and thus defeats the mission of human life. Maharaj Parikshit knew very well that liberated souls who have taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot possibly become absorbed in household affairs, nor attached to family members. He thus inquired from Sukadeva Goswami, O great Brahmana, this is my doubt. How was it possible for a person like King Priyabrata, who was attached to wife, children, and home, to achieve the topmost perfection in Krishna consciousness? Sukadeva Goswami replied, What you have said is correct. One who has become attached to the nectar like honey of the Lord's lotus feet, and whose mind is always absorbed in hearing his glories, can never give up his exalted position, although he may sometimes become checked by an impediment. In this way, Sukadeva Goswami accepted both of King Parikshit's suggestions that one who is advanced in Krishna consciousness cannot once again embrace materialistic life, and that one who is fully absorbed in materialistic life cannot take up Krishna consciousness at any stage. But Sukadeva Goswami qualified this by saying that the devotee may sometimes become influenced by impediments, and these are of two kinds, Vaishnava Aparadha, and the desire of the Lord or his devotee to impede one's devotional service, as when Jaya and Vijaya were cursed by the four Kumaras. Under Narada Muni's direction, Priyabrata practiced austerities by which he was able to achieve the highest perfection of transcendental knowledge. Due to Priyabrata's absence, however, his younger brother Uttanpada had ruled the earth under the direction of his father Swambhuva Manu. Up until the time of the Prachetas, all kings had been descendants of Uttanpada. Then, when there was no suitable king after the Prachetas, Swambhuva Manu went to the Gandhamadhana mountain to bring back his eldest son to rule the world. Although Manu tried to convince Priyabrata that this was his duty according to revealed scriptures because of his advancement in spiritual life, the prince did not welcome the idea of becoming the emperor. Thus, even though he knew that the order of his father could not be rejected, Priyabrata respectfully raised the question of whether he might become diverted from Krishna consciousness as a result of accepting so much material responsibility. When Lord Brahma, who is ultimately responsible for the welfare of the universe, saw how Priyabrata had politely refused to accept the throne, he descended to the Gandhamadhana hill upon his great swan carrier. Brahma knew that only his order would make Priyabrata relent, because the son of Manu had received very impressive instructions about renunciation from Narada. All the demigods headed by Lord Shiva, as well as the great sages and the Vedas personified, assembled in the sky to receive and worship Lord Brahma. Thus the grandsire appeared just like the full moon surrounded by innumerable shining stars. As soon as Narada saw the swan carrier, he could understand that his father had arrived, and so he immediately stood up with folded hands, as did Swambhuva Manu and Priyabrata, to receive and worship Lord Brahma with great respect. While being praised by all present, Lord Brahma became compassionate while seeing Priyabrata before him, and so he mildly smiled. This indicated that in spite of the fact that he was going to convince Priyabrata of the necessity to accept household life and govern the world, Lord Brahma knew that his grandson would not become deviated from devotional service. It is very well known that there is sometimes competitive joking between grandfather and grandson. In this case, Priyabrata was determined to remain absorbed in meditation, whereas Lord Brahma was determined that he would rule the earth. Lord Brahma then said, My dear Priyabrata, please listen to me attentively. Do not be envious of the Supreme Lord, who is beyond our power of imagination. All of us, including Lord Shiva, Narada, and myself, must carry out his orders. No one can avoid the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead on the strength of his austerities, mystic powers, physical prowess, intelligence, or by any other means. My dear boy, do not think that I have come here as your enemy. As one of the great authorities, I always act under the direction of the Supreme Lord. We are all bound by the Vedic injunctions, just as bulls are forced to move when the driver pulls the ropes knotted in their noses. Because we are all being ultimately controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we should voluntarily accept His direction. Just as a blind man is happy to be led around by a person who has eyes. Although most exalted, a liberated soul does not resent having to accept the results of his past karma, because he knows that the material body is acting under the influence of the modes of material nature, whereas he is transcendental. My dear prince, if one is not self controlled, he must always fear material bondage, even if he goes from forest to forest, because he is living with six co wives, the mind and the senses. One on the other hand, even household life cannot harm a self satisfied person who has conquered his senses. Indeed, one who is situated in household life and systematically conquers his mind and senses is like a king in his fortress who defeats his powerful enemies. After having controlled his lust by training in the Grihastha ashrama, one can move freely anywhere without danger. Therefore, you should fix your mind firmly upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord and accept whatever material enjoyment He has ordained for you. Considering his position to be inferior, Priyabrata offered his obeisances to Lord Brahma and accepted his order with great respect. At this time, neither Narada, who was frustrated in making a disciple, nor Priyabrata, whose vow of brahmacharya had been broken, looked upon Lord Brahma with feelings of resentment, for they knew very well how to respect a superior personality. After being worshipped by Swayambhuva Manu, who was very grateful that his son had been persuaded to accept his order, Lord Brahma returned to his own abode, Satyaloka. Finally, with the permission of Narada, Swayambhuva Manu gave his son the responsibility for maintaining and protecting the earth. After thus becoming relieved from the most dangerous poison of material life, Manu happily retired to the forest. After returning home, Priyabrata married Barhishmati, the daughter of Prajapati Vishwakarma, and through her he begot 10 sons, headed by Agnidhra, and also one daughter. 3 of his sons were trained from the very beginning of their lives to become Paramahansas, and thus they never married. By another wife, Priyabrata begot 3 more sons named Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata, who later on became Manus. Priyabrata continued ruling the earth for 1,100,000,000 years, and due to his unparalleled prowess, no inimical persons dared to even approach him. He greatly loved his wife Barhismati, and with the passing of the days, their exchange of conjugal love increased more and more. By her feminine behavior in dressing herself, walking, smiling, laughing, and glancing about, the queen greatly increased King Priyabrata's energy so that he could perform his royal duties very attentively. Thus, although he was a great soul, Priyabrata appeared to act just like an ordinary man, merged in the feminine conduct of his wife. Once Maharaja Priyabrata became dissatisfied with the way the sun circumambulated Mount Sumeru. For 6 months of the year, the sun travels on the northern side, giving the southern side less light, and for 6 months it travels on the southern side, giving the northern side less light. Considering this, the king decided to make daylight in that part of the universe where there is night. To accomplish this, he followed the sun god on a brilliant chariot, having received such wonderful prowess due to having worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As King Priyabrata drove his chariot behind the sun, the rims of the wheels created impressions that later on became the 7 oceans, dividing Bhumandala into 7 islands. Maharaja Priyabrata later on gave the sovereignty of these 7 islands to his 7 sons, and gave his daughter Urjaswati in marriage to Sukracharya, who begot in her a daughter named Devjani. Finally, while enjoying his material opulence with full strength and influence, Priyabrata began to consider how he had somehow become entangled in material activities. After having surrendered unto the lotus feet of Narada Muni and becoming firmly situated on the path of Krishna consciousness. In this way, the king's mind became very restless, and he began to exhibit a spirit of renunciation by criticizing himself as follows: "Oh, how condemned I have become due to a life of sense gratification! Now I have had enough. I am not going to remain here any longer like a dancing monkey, being led around by the hands of my wife." Thus, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaja Priyabrata was reawakened to his good sense. After dividing his possessions amongst his sons, he gave up his wife and very opulent kingdom, and with a purified heart he returned to the Krishna conscious position he had previously attained by the grace of the great sage Narada. Hare Krishna.